Okay, so what we'll start out with is what a tune-up's all about. It's actually trying to build yourself some electrical reserve and making sure that your electric, say your battery and everything is kind of up to a good tune-up. So one of the first good things to do is to open up the trunk lid and take a look at the battery and see how it looks like. See if the terminals need to be cleaned up and stuff like that. So why don't we actually start out at the battery and see what our battery looks like. Gosh, nice clean motor. It's nice to work on clean motors. Well, you got one of those funny carburetors on here. So anyhow,
uh-oh, you gotta go forward.
A little bit?
Yeah, don't put the brake on. Alright, that's good.
Let's not run the brake down.
I hope that car doesn't leak well because the floor in here.
So what is this? This must be emergency supplies.
Just in case. No. My AAA isn't responsive.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, wait the 4 hours.
Trunk ports.
But at least they're coming.
I gotta tell you about these things. These are about the most dangerous thing you can have in your Mini.
Well, it's a good thing I've got one.
Well, it's nice to be able to stick something onto, but if you got somebody in the back seat, you probably don't want it in there, because if you ever get hit in the back, I've seen those whole back seats just absolutely bowed out from the trunk port.
I don't have anybody in the back seat for it.
Well, that and it also multiplies the damage to your car considerably, so anyhow, not to say that this is a part of a tune-up.
So what happens if they cut them in pieces so it collapses when it happens?
There you go.
That way the accordion in and
Ours is 1/8 AC. Decapitation. It'll crunch it.
It'll go into splinters.
Yeah, that's why
It'll be
they
dust.
offer them and then you remove them.
Are you back up?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because ours didn't have it. It would be an add-on. And we were trying to get more money.
Everything looks like somebody's done this here recently, so the thing actually looks pretty clean.
Terminals are all cleaned up.
Next good thing to do is to come up here and check your fan belt and see how tight it is. If you spin your alternator with your finger, probably too loose. And that's just about right there. You don't want to get them too tight. So basically that way you're at least making your battery charged up or whatever. So loose fan belts cause a lot of your problems.
Well, it is clean.
So while it's warm, we'll try for a compression check and see what your compression is.
While we're doing that, Ward, what is the optimum engine temperature when driving? Or at stock 1275 or something like that?
If you look in the factory book, it'll tell you that you should change your wow, somebody's really put those in there.
Strong on
Compression problems will definitely give you problems for its power and rob you of a lot of gas. So
One,
you
two,
want to,
three, four.
so you want to check the gap on that and make sure that they're 25 thousandths.
Do you have a preference on brand and style of spark plug?
Iridium.
No, I just find that maybe some of them are better than others.
Oh, that's instructive,
You
yeah.
know, you probably, well, I mean, they have a lot of different spark plugs out these days, you know what I mean? So you have a
Crosswires and all
pretty
that.
high variety of whatever, and they got some pretty nice ones here. These look pretty damn good, you know, so I don't know.
What are
As long
those?
as you're not blowing
NGK.
them away.
Yeah.
I've used NGK for years. I used Champions. Well, a lot of people say, oh, champions or whatever, but I don't know, I've always got along with them good, and they were the original spark plug in these motors. All right. Oh, plenty of it.
What are you reading? How much?
I got about 200 pounds.
200?
Yeah, that's probably a little more than you probably would expect in one of these things. Stock Cooper S only came with 180, 185, 180.
And how about a stock 998?
165 to 135, something like that. We got about 180 there. Kind of, let's go back and check this one here and see we weren't pumping a bunch of suet.
Or what about having the throttle open?
That's the reason why I got 4 spark plugs out of it.
No, I mean, oh, well, for...
Yeah, we got a little high.
Still 200.
If you crank the motor and you didn't have all the spark plugs out, but just wanted to check one barrel or whatever, yeah, you got to open up the carburetor. I don't know, you can open it up and see if it makes any difference, but I don't think it will. Pretty much can feed what you want through all these spark plugs. Usually that's the reason why when you have trouble with one, you have trouble with more than one. Yeah, we're still 190 range. Maybe you better run this a little harder and blow the carbon out of it. Maybe you got carbon built up in that. So yeah, you're pretty much running about 190 pounds per barrel.
Well, that's better than 110, though, huh?
You're pretty even. Let's say 10% variance.
So if you got too much pressure, then what does that mean? Carbon buildup?
Oh, not always, or whatever. It means that maybe somebody got maybe playing too much material off the bottom of your head. Wrong pistons. Whatever. Yeah. The big deal is there isn't such a thing as there's too much compression as long as you can buy some gas for it. But pull up in front of the pump and then drive off and it starts to pinging and you're running super, you know you're in trouble. So somebody's got these gapped out quite a bit, but then sometimes they just get that way all on their own. But there's a reason why you run the effect is I race all my race motors I run only on at 22 thousandths. But this is what tells the whole rest of the system how much spark it's going to produce to be able to spark this spark plug. So this is the guy who's the most intelligent. If you gap it wider, it takes more spark. If you gap it narrower, it takes a little less. A lot of people have a tendency to say gap them a little wider so they have a hotter spark or whatever, and in reality the whole system is not made to do that. If you had a crank fire ignition with a higher amperage coils and stuff like that, you can get away with it, but even at that, spark plug wires they have their limits trying to deliver the spark. They're only going to handle so much. That's the same way with the rotors and the cap and everything else has to be designed as a part of the system. So most of the system has been designed to get in, and of course the more compression you end up with, the narrower you want to run the gap, because it requires more when you're under load to be able to spark the spark. So your voltage goes up a lot higher or whatever. So we try and meet some kind of a standard in between to be able to regulate the, not overuse your system. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to lower the requirement of the voltage to be able to make sure this has got a reserve for it. So like when you step on the gas pedal hard or whatever, that you'll actually have that voltage. Where if it was requiring that much voltage and you stepped on the gas pedal, it will start a misfiring. It's because it's requiring even more basically, and you don't have that in reserve. Most coils, they say, well, this is a 60,000 volt coil. Yeah, and it'll fire 60,000 volts, but in reality, it'll probably start failing at about 30,000 volts. See, so in reality, you can't. This has got one coil and it's got 4 cylinders in here, so you got to charge that. You got to charge that coil in between each fire, basically. And as your RPMs come up and your requirements come up, the coil doesn't get a chance to fully charge before it discharges. So basically, you got to keep the voltage down where you can. So the system itself can actually handle it without failing on you.
What do you consider to be the service life of the plug wires?
Well, you have electronic ignition in this thing. So when it comes right down to it, it'll put out just about as much voltage as these things are going to require you to put out.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll probably go for quite a while. But the thing that I find out is that the cheapest tune-up that you can do to protect all the things that are in your car, basically, or in your ignition system, is to screw a new set of spark plugs in, probably once a year, something like that. If you use it very much, recap it about every 6 months if you're using it a lot, so that you can keep the thing within its tuned range, basically, so that, like I say, everything has a harmony. So just doing that would bring the trouble with around here is I'm not a professional anymore. I don't have the professional tools. I've worked with them and I know what they do, basically. If you have an oscilloscope, you can read out how many volts that you're actually running. You can take a car that's idling at 12 or 14, 12,000 volts, put a new set of spark plugs, a new set of wire, and then it'll start firing at 6,000 volts. That's what a tune-up does, is it brings that requirement down so that basically you have a certain amount of harmony in your ignition system. Torque these probably 16 pounds or something like that. I like to put them in by hand because I got a good feel for it. I don't like over tightening spark plugs.
Is there a difference between spark plugs between aluminum headed and the standard metal head?
I think
Like
they
cast-
make all the same spark plug, whether it's aluminum or
Okay.
whatever. The big deal with the aluminum one is you better put some lubricant on your threads so that you don't gall those threads up when you're putting that stuff in or having to take it back out again. So. And a bad spark plug wire will tell you by just not wanting to work. There's a way of being able to pull this off and put your ohm meter in there and check it to see how many ohms of resistance this resistance wire has to tell whether it's any good or not. So I mean, you actually can check them, but first thing that happens is the damn thing stops running right in the first place. So.